Let's have a look, a preliminary look at artificial intelligence and warfare. And so there's the reference articles, one by Coker AI and the Future of War. Now, Coker raises a standard philosophical question. What is the role of human agency in X? Now, what's going on here? Well, first off, we have a number of terms. Human agency, okay, that's a good one. That's a puzzler. You know, what do we mean by agency? What do we mean by human agency? Is agency different? Is human agency a particular kind of agency as opposed to, let's say, like a particular kind, like a species of agency? So agency is like a genus. Human agency is a species. And non-human agency, you know, like elephants and dolphins and do plants have agency? Okay, so this question of what constitutes agency, this is an old one, and it was traditionally only handed over to humans. So agency was synonymous with human agency. That is a traditional view, but you know it's pretty tough to believe that now, given how much we know that non-human animals can do. Even the fact that I'm using the expression non-human animals, we're part of the story now. And but nonetheless, that doesn't clarify exactly what we mean by human agency. All right, and so what's the role of human agency in X? And X is a kind of situation. So what role does human agency play in politics or whatnot? So a variety of things. But here our situation is the increasing presence of artificial intelligence in war. That's what we're interested in looking at. Now, human agency is, as I said, it's an old topic. It's difficult. It's controversial. It's, you know, there's lots of disagreements. Do moral considerations count? You know, is a fundamental requirement of agency, you know, maybe a non-moral one, just simply having the capacity for sentience? So some things that are alive, like a, you know, like a plant, we'd say, well, yeah, it's alive, but it doesn't have sentience, so it's not an agent, whereas a dog is alive, like a plant, like us. But a dog is clearly sentient. And then, you know, is sentience enough? Some organisms might be able to react to their environment, like they feel it or whatnot. You know, plants do react to their environment, you know, phototropism, you know, watching the sunflowers follow the sun. Is that enough? You know, is that enough to really get sentience and interests and all these things that are normally correlated or subsumed under the concept of agency? Well, so you got this rather difficult thing when you're talking about artificial intelligence. We're not even always clear what natural intelligence is. So even the very idea of intelligence is problematic, and we're going to be looking at that in more detail as we go along. But you know, typically in the tradition, you know, you've heard expressions like the classic, you know, man is a rational animal. So while the ancients, you know, Aristotle regarded us physically, and most of our lives was really on the animal-like level, much closer than, let's say, somebody like Descartes. But you know, what really distinguished the human being was its capacity for rational thought and rationality. So it's not just sentience. It's not just sort of the ability to react to an environment. It's, you know, the ability to, you know, do higher order mathematics, logic puzzles, things like that, reason, construct theories of the world. And sometimes people will say, it's not just a matter of constructing theories about the world, but there is a possibility of second order constructions. And by that, I simply mean the ability to interpret one's interpretations. And by that, I'll explain it just by contrasting it with a dog. My dog has interpreted the world of my house, right? I've helped her along by teaching her not to interpret my couch as a toy to chew. And to interpret those objects over there as toys, right? So helping and my dog naturally, you know, my dog has interpreted my house as a place to live in and sleep, not go to the washroom. So anyways, these are basic level interpretations. What my dog doesn't do is interpret the interpretation. So we as human beings sometimes We interpret our own interpretations and we argue about them. So dogs don't really do that, at least as far as I know. Maybe they will someday. But in any case, so the unpacking of the notion of human agency is an old, shall we say, it's an old and fascinating problem, and it still is with us today. And you want to think about this when you start thinking about, robots or computers or whatever having agency. Some people just say, yeah, they do. But the problem is what exactly do you mean by agency? Do they have agency like us? Is that important? Do they have to have agency like us? And maybe they have a superior form of agency. Anyways, all good questions and all in due time. All right, so it's fraught, examining agency is fraught with difficulties. Coker doesn't really do this. He doesn't get into all this. He's going to bypass all these questions, all right? And that's fine. I mean, not every article does everything. And so Coker looks at two trends long discussed in philosophical literature in general, and you'll find it a lot in science fiction as well. There's with respect to artificial intelligence. And in this one, there's two main themes he talks about. One is I put briefly as dehumanization. He doesn't talk too much about that. One is the dreaded replacement hypothesis, right? Dehumanization in the AI of humans, well, in the AI environment is just what you would think is the notion of downgrading us with respect to artificial intelligence. We're increasingly becoming separated, right, from our actions via technological innovation. Technological innovation, but what I'm really getting at is technological mediation. You're becoming separated from the world of others, the world of nature, by technology, he says, as he lectures to a camera, right? And you're sitting at home in a computer. We're not in a classroom. So our interaction right now is mediated through technology and a vast system of it, right? Think about what's going on here to get what I'm doing all the way into the machine and down through the system and out of your machine. And finally, you hear what's going on. So our the teacher-student relationship, whatever you want to call it, is heavily mediated by technology. And you might be of the view, well, so what? But it's a clear question to ask, and an important one is, how does this affect how we relate to one another? So technological and the trends, shall we say, in the dehumanization is increasing mediation by technology actually makes us less human, right? Big claim, interesting one, and certainly worthwhile examining. So, but what does it do? What is one of the claims of technological mediation? Well, you find this in a lot of science fiction and a lot of literature, and certainly a lot of the writers on technology in the early 20th century. This changes us. It dehumanizes us in one way. It makes us actually less human because it makes us more predictable. Right? The more we engage with devices, the more predictable we become. Think about, if I give you a rough way of thinking about this. If you have artistic ideas, you want to draw stuff, and I give you, a set of paints and a canvas, and I say, have at her. And then I give you a computer with a program in it, and I say, go for it. Well, some people would argue that the more advanced the mediation, the less freedom you have to express yourself. So you would have more freedom to express yourself through a canvas and paints than you would through a computer program, because remember, somebody programmed that computer. So it's got constraints on what you can do with it, right? Just like right now, well, if I were in a classroom, I'd normally be walking around and I would be, closely interacting with students. I can't do that here because if I simply walk a little bit in that direction, I'm off screen. If I walk too far away, you can't hear me, etc., etc. So there are, shall we say, just constraints imposed by the mediation of technology. And the more constraints, well, the fewer choices I have in which to express myself. So you can see the logic is essentially more constraints, fewer elements in the choice set, fewer elements in the choice set, fewer ways to express yourself, limited degrees of freedom. So in that sense, and of course, science fiction authors love this stuff. And so, one of my favorite science fiction authors, Philip K. Dick, talks about how society and technology is turning us into clacking insects, right? As it restricts, we just operate within the modes of society that are allowed. And then eventually you're not even really a free being anymore. You're just reduced to some sort of shell, some sort of exoskeleton that makes the odd choices in a clacking insect-like way. This is very common. You also find this in John Updike's novel, and of course in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. This is a big theme in that as well. All right, so that's a rather depressing note, but that's not really what Coker is going to concentrate on. He wants to talk more about the second theme, the replacement one. Not that we're just being dehumanized, but that we're on the way out. AI is going to take over. You often hear this, right? That, oh, well, I remember as being an undergrad, many years ago, and it was projected by the time, 2010 rolled around, many of the things that humans did, computers would do now. And a lot of that has come true. A lot of things computers do now that you'd be surprised at how much artificial intelligence does a lot of things. But it still doesn't quite have the wide open kind of space of adaptability that we have. Maybe not yet or whatnot. But the goal, the idea of the replacement is that eventually computers will do what we do. They already play chess better than we do. The best computer beats the grandmaster, right? And then, of course, you can get into the debate of does a computer play chess the way a human does, et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, the best computer beats the grandmaster, right? That was a shock, but it's already happened. We're beyond that. So what's next? So little by little, computers or artificial intelligence, AI, is going to replace us. That's the replacement notion. And so some people are terrified of that. And then you get utopian style writers. In the old days of science fiction in the golden age, it was regarded as, this is great. They'll liberate us and we'll just hang out and enjoy life and the computers will do all the work. Okay, maybe, maybe not. But this eventual rebellion by AI is also a constant theme in that we're going to eventually, this is dangerous. We're going to turn control over. And we better do something about it. And this idea of the dangerous replacement hypothesis that Coker's alluding to, this comes out, again, in a lot of literature. You can check out, for instance, Isaac Asimov wrote a lot about this in a really neat little story called Runaround, published in 1941. So these concerns over AI are nothing new. So in 1941, in the story Runaround, Asimov was, laid out the three laws of robots, right? The three rules that they had to obey about not injuring humans directly or indirectly. They have to obey human orders and protect themselves as long as the obeying of human orders and protecting themselves doesn't violate rule one, which is don't cause harm to humans. So this idea, this fear has been around a long time. Nothing new there. So this has been developed. That is Asimov's idea of sort of this concern over replacement or endangerment by AI or robots. This is an old one. And Coker wants to challenge this a bit. He wants to challenge what's going on with this, quote unquote, the replacement fear. So that's what we're going to have a look at in just a moment.